Under the blazing Mediterranean sun, the cliffside villas of Naples slid into view as the sleek white yacht cut through sapphire waters, the hum of its engines mingling with the distant laughter of café patrons sipping espresso in the shadow of Vesuvius. Brooke Logan, Forester, radiant in a flowing turquoise caftan emblazoned with gold embroidery that clung to her curves in the warm sea breeze, leaned over the polished rail, her fingers trailing fingertips across the surface of the wake. She closed her eyes against the brilliance of the morning, breathing in the briny perfume of salt and freedom, the weight of LA intrigues and family drama melting under an Italian sky. Behind her, Nick Spencer adjusted the angle of the folding chairs on the aft deck, his signature leather jacket now draped casually over a teak love seat, revealing a crisp white linen shirt unbuttoned at the throat. Across the deck, Ridge Forrester, tall, dark, handsome, a study in designer chic in his slim-cut navy blazer and pale chinos, watched her with that familiar combination of desire and fierce protectiveness flickering through his storm-gray eyes. Sparks had always flown among Brooke, Nick, and Ridge, a triangle as beautiful and dangerous as the cliffs of Capri they planned to explore next, but today every glance, every breath held tension as taut as the yacht's rigging. Brooke had suggested this escape to celebrate a new collection launch and to recapture something she feared was slipping through her fingers, the uncomplicated joy of living. Nick, ever the adventurer, had charted a course for this weekend of sun-drenched opulence, while Ridge, summoned by Eric himself, had arrived almost grudgingly, only to find himself unable to resist the siren call of Italian romance or the ache in his chest whenever Brooke laughed. As the yacht approached the archipelago, the crew announced an anchorage near a hidden cove on Capri's southern shore, a place of legend where only crystal-clear grottos and the gulls bore witness to lovers' secrets. Brooke's heart soared at the thought of plunging into the cool emerald grottos she'd seen in postcards, of losing herself in the swirl of myth and sea, until a sudden lurch of the yacht, a miscalculation of tide against hull, sent her sprawling forward. In the flash of a heartbeat, her foot caught the lip of the polished teak deck, the caftan snagged on the rail, and she tumbled overboard with a gasp that cut through the bright day like a knife. Time slowed as her body arched above the water, the turquoise silk fanning out like wings before she vanished beneath the surface, a solitary figure swallowed by the depths. In that instant, Nick and Ridge sprang into action as one. Nick leapt from the starboard rail, arms slicing the air in a perfect dive, while Ridge, from the port side, shed his blazer in midair, boots thudding against the deck as he cleared the rail with the power of a panther. Two figures plunged into the sun-dappled sea, twin plumes of spray heralding their desperate race to save the woman they both loved. Beneath the sunlit surface, Brooke's panic flared as she kicked upward, the shock of cold water stealing her breath. She saw Nick's familiar t-shirt first, his strong arms breaking through the surface to enfold her in a protective cradle, his voice rasping with concern. "Brooke, are you okay? I've got you." But almost simultaneously, Ridge's hand appeared, his fingers brushing her wrist, strong and certain. "Hold on to me, Brooke," he commanded, his voice the lifeline. In a swirl of coral and sky, the three bodies snapped together. Ridge's hand found Nick's shoulder as he anchored Brooke's back. Nick angled her legs, and together they fought the eddies dragging her under. Up, up they surged, finally breaking the surface in a tangle of limbs and gasps, Ridge hauling Brooke's head above the wave as Nick kicked both of them back toward the yacht. Salt stung Brooke's eyes, her cloak of hair plastered to her cheeks, but when she blinked through tears of fear and relief, she saw Ridge's face mere inches from hers, water gleaming on his forehead, his brow lined with fierce relief, while Nick hovered nearby, chest heaving. eyes dark with both triumph and envy. Crew members dangled a buoyant ladder, and together Ridge and Nick hauled Brooke aboard, her legs buckling as they reached the deck. Ridge caught her under the arms, his jacket, now waterlogged, draped over her shoulders, while Nick knelt beside her, his hand finding hers and squeezing gently. Brooke, heart pounding like a drum, looked from Nick's earnest concern to Ridge's unwavering gaze, and in that electric instant she realized what had lain dormant beneath layers of history and heartache. Ridge's love for her was immutable, a force as unyielding as the sea itself, while Nick's passion, though genuine, was driven by a desire to rescue, to conquer, to possess. Ridge's hand brushed a stray lock of wet hair from Brooke's temple, his fingers trembling. "You're safe now," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Brooke closed her eyes, leaning into the warmth of Ridge's embrace, the ocean breeze whispering around them like a chorus of witnesses. In the wake of the rescue, the deck fell into a hush as onlookers, staff and guests alike, emerged from the cabin, their expressions a mixture of awe and relief. Brooke, trembling but unbroken, straightened with Ridge's help and faced the two men who had risked everything for her. Water dripped from her lashes as she spoke softly, "Thank you," but her eyes never left Ridge's, and in that unwavering gaze he saw the truth he'd denied for too long. That his bond with Brooke was forged not just by years of passion, but by a deep, protective love that no other could claim. Nick rose from his kneel, face pale with emotion, and bowed his head in silent concession, his hand falling from Brooke's as he stepped back, the thrill of the rescue replaced by the sting of surrender. Ridge swept Brooke into his arms, her damp kaftan clinging to him like a promise, and held her close as the yacht drifted in the golden haze of late afternoon. Below deck, the first aid kit lay unopened. Brooke was shaken but whole, her pulse racing not from the near drowning, but from the ache in her heart finally crystallizing into clarity. As the yacht slipped away from Capri toward the sunset, Brooke nestled against Ridge's chest, her fingers tracing the familiar lines of his shirt, and he pressed a tender kiss to her hair, murmuring, "You belong with me." In that moment, surrounded by the endless sea and the fading light of an Italian evening, the tumult of past betrayals and rivalries fell away, and hope blossomed anew. Down on deck, Nick watched the silhouette of Ridge and Brooke framed against the painted sky, the realization dawning that some loves are too deep to be overshadowed, too enduring to be denied. And as the yacht cut a steady course toward Naples, the drama of that rescue would echo through every boardroom and ballroom back in Los Angeles, rewriting the narrative of who truly held Brooke's heart, and marking a turning point that would bind Ridge and Brooke together in a love as vast and unbreakable as the sea itself. As the yacht's deck shuddered beneath Ridge's frantic weight, he pressed Brooke's slender body to his chest, her once vibrant eyes now fixed and unseeing, saltwater sliding from her eyelashes like tears he could not console. He screamed her name into the Mediterranean wind as he cradled her limp form, digging his fingers into her damp shoulders, willing her to breathe, willing her heart to beat once more. Below, the crew scrambled with frantic efficiency. Life rings thudding against teak, oxygen tanks clinking, a medic kneeling beside them, unbuckling her life jacket. Ridge dropped to his knees, his designer chinos soaked through, and raked Brooke's hair from her face, his fingers slick with salt and panic. "Brooke, please," he begged, voice cracking. He pressed his lips to her mouth, inhaling the faint scent of jasmine still clinging to her damp kaftan, offering the breath he feared was already gone. Nick Spencer, ash-faced and trembling, hovered at the rail, shouting at the medic to hurry, but every second stretched into an eternity. At last, the medic straightened, eyes shadowed with sorrow. "I'm so sorry," he murmured, and Ridge felt the world tilt beneath him. He clutched Brooke to his heart, tears mixing with sea spray as the yacht's engines idled in the hush of that impossible moment. He would later recall the sound, the gasket's faint sigh, the hush of the water lapping against hull. But in that instant, there was only the hollow echo of her name. By the time they reached the secluded cove where the tender ferried them back to Naples, Ridge had not released Brooke from his arms. He sat on the teak deck of the tender, her head against his chest, her hair cascading over his arm like dark waves. He rocked them gently, as though his heartbeat alone could summon her back to life. The nurses from the coastal clinic in Positano met them at the rocky shore, but even as they worked with recovering urgency, Ridge felt his hope draining away with the sun that dipped below the towering cliffs. He knelt beside the gurney, holding Brooke's hand, pressing his cheek to her skin, willing her eyes to flutter open. When the doctor stepped away, removing his stethoscope, his face grave beneath the brim of his scrub cap, Ridge knew. His knees buckled and he sank to the ground, Brooke's hand slipping from his grasp as he screamed into the night. Across the water, Capri's black silhouette stood witness to his grief. Word of Brooke's passing raced back to Los Angeles faster than lightning. At Forrester Creations, Steffi collapsed in Finn's arms when the message came. Eric's usually immovable frame trembled as he reached for his wife, Donna. Taylor wept into Wyatt's shoulder, guilt and sorrow intertwining as she remembered Brooke's unwavering support. Nick, who had moments before celebrated the romance of Italy as a brilliant diversion, now found himself alone in his suite, the chill of betrayal turning to anguish as he scrawled letters of apology on stationery he could not bear to mail. Ridge returned to L.A. 3 days later, bearing Brooke's body in a white casket adorned with lilies and white roses, the church's stained glass windows casting fractured rainbows across her still face. His dark hair fell uncut, his usual tailored jackets replaced by a simple black suit, the hem of his trousers brushing the floor as he stumbled down the aisle to place a single ring, Brooke's platinum wedding band, beneath her outstretched hand. Family and friends filled the pews in hushed reverence. The Forrester clan, bound by legacy and now by grief, the Logan sisters, broken by the absence of the light that Brooke had been in their lives, Carter, seated alone, guilt carrying him like a shroud, even Luna, long since exiled, watched from the back with a face shaped by regret. As the minister's voice broke the stillness, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven," Ridge's throat closed. He placed a trembling finger on Brooke's cold hand, his tears falling like pearls into her palm. Then came the moment he had dreaded more than any confrontation with enemies, Brooke's personal eulogy. Ridge stood, voice raw as he recounted the memory of that first sunrise they'd shared at Forrester's Malibu house, the laughter that had filled every boardroom victory and private defeat. He spoke of her fierce compassion. How she had championed every designer's dream, how she had forgiven his worst mistakes, and of the way she had loved him with a bravery that transcended every scandal, every betrayal. He ended in a whisper, "I will carry your love with me until my last breath, my dearest Brooke." The hush that followed was heavier than the marble mausoleum. Outside, the chapel doors opened, and the gathering followed the procession to the Fairhaven Cemetery, where the casket was lowered into a soil turned soft by tears. Ridge pressed a final kiss to Brooke's forehead and released her hand, the weight of his loss sinking into his bones. The guests scattered among flower-laden plots, each dropping a bloom into the grave, lilies from Steffi, hydrangeas from Taylor, a single red rose from Nick, now forever barred from Ridge's embrace. In the weeks that followed, Forrester Creations felt the emptiness left by Brooke's absence like a ghost in the halls. Ridge poured himself into his work, sketches of new collections stained with tears, but every design lacked the spark that only Brooke's spirit could ignite. He stood alone at the head of the massive conference table, dictating strategy to a team that looked more like silhouettes through the haze of his grief. The Logan women held a private memorial luncheon at Il Giardino, Brooke's favorite Italian restaurant, where they toasted her vivacity and vowed to preserve her legacy within every sketch, every runway show. Taylor, racked by guilt for recent betrayals, sifted through old photographs of Brooke's kindest moments, promising herself to honor Brooke by caring for her daughter and for Ridge to bridge the chasm left in the wake of tragedy. Carter, exiled from the inner circle by his deceptions, stood on the periphery of the funeral, offering Ridge a silent nod that spoke of both apology and resignation. Ridge met his gaze once. The look in his eyes bore final forgiveness, and the unspoken command never to return. In the fierce solitude of his grief, Ridge found a single, searing clarity. He must live in a way that honored Brooke's memory. By leading the company with empathy, by guarding the bonds of family against pride and secrecy, by refusing to let her death become another scandal in the world's tabloids. It was on the anniversary of her passing that Ridge ascended the lectern at the Forrester Charity Gala, his heart heavy but steady. He unveiled the Brooke Logan Fund, a scholarship for aspiring designers in need, supported by the entirety of the Forrester line, her love woven into every stitch. As he spoke, his voice cracked, yet each word carried the weight of the promise he had made at her grave, to keep her spirit alive in every garment, every gesture of kindness, every triumph of creativity. Beneath the glittering chandeliers, amidst the hum of approval, Ridge stood not as a man defeated by loss, but as one reborn by the love he had shared, and by the unwavering truth that some souls, though gone from sight, remain forever at the center of our lives. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, Brooke Logan's final journey to the sea became the moment that shaped not only a legacy of fashion, but the very heart of a man who would carry her light into every tomorrow.